I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The supplier meeting in Houston ended 2 hours ahead of schedule, and the usual post-lunch traffic on I-10 was light for once. I remember thinking I'd stop by the house, maybe take a quick nap before Savannah got back from her volunteer shift. I wasn't expecting anything unusual, just the kind of quiet afternoon you don't usually notice until they're gone for good. The house was still, golden with late afternoon light. Mail untouched on the kitchen counter. Coffee mug in the sink. A candle flickering low in the living room, one of those woodwick ones that crackled like a tiny fireplace. I walked past it without a second thought, headed toward the bedroom to change out of my blazer. That's when I saw it. There, sitting on Savannah's dresser, was a small, open velvet box. Deep navy blue, the kind jewelers use when something's either very expensive or very personal. Inside was a bracelet, delicate, silver, probably platinum, and definitely new. No tag, no receipt, no explanation. It was beautiful in a way Savannah usually wasn't drawn to. She liked loud, chunky earrings, bright scarves, statement necklaces that said, "I'm here before I say a word." This was the opposite, elegant and understated, something that whispered instead of shouted. It didn't look like her taste. And it didn't look like something I had given her because it wasn't. I picked it up carefully, like I was afraid it might dissolve in my hands. The metal was cool. The clasp simple. And on the inside, a tiny inscription. Wildfire // J. That's when something cracked inside me, not like an explosion, not yet. More like a hairline fracture in the windshield you barely notice until the cold hits it. J. My name is Miles. Her dad's name is Gary. Her best friend is Elena. No J. No one I could immediately attach to this mystery, no context to wrap around it. Just that word, wildfire. A term of endearment? A memory? A private joke I wasn't in on? I stood there longer than I probably should have, trying to logic my way through it. Maybe she bought it for someone else. Maybe she found it. Maybe it was a client gift or something she'd forgotten to mention. My mind churned out half-formed excuses faster than I could discard them. When I finally set the bracelet back in the box, my hand was shaking more than I wanted to admit. I didn't snap it shut. I left it exactly how I found it, open, centered on the dresser. Visible. Maybe I wanted her to see that I'd seen it. Maybe I wanted her to bring it up before I had to ask. But when Savannah came home later that evening, she didn't mention it at all. She kissed me hello like nothing was off. She asked about Houston. She laughed at some joke I barely remember telling. And when I peeked into the bedroom while she was grabbing a sweater before dinner, the box was gone. Gone. Not moved. Not tucked away. Gone. I asked her what she wanted to eat. She said she'd been craving Thai. We ordered from our usual spot. She scrolled her phone while I queued up a movie, and we sat side by side on the couch, just like we always did. Except now, there was a buzz under my skin I couldn't turn off. Later that night, after we'd eaten and half-watched a documentary about national parks, she got up to shower. I stayed on the couch, pretending to check email. Her phone, always within arm's reach, was charging on the side table. And the moment the water started running in the bathroom, it began buzzing. Not once. Not twice. Buzz. Pause. Buzz. Pause. Buzz. 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 I didn't look at the screen. I didn't have to. The rhythm alone was damning. Whoever it was, they were persistent. And it didn't feel like a friend who forgot the time or a group chat lighting up. This felt urgent. Like someone expecting a response that had been promised. When Savannah returned, towel-wrapped and radiant in the dim hallway light, she picked up the phone, swiped without looking, and flipped it face down. No explanation. No apology for the noise. Just a casual shrug as she walked past me into the bedroom, humming a little tune I didn't recognize. I sat on the couch for another hour, staring at the TV while the credits rolled and autoplay moved on to something else entirely. I don't remember what it was. I just remember the silence. It used to be a good kind of silence, the kind shared between two people who knew each other so well they didn't always need words. But that night, it was different. It felt like we were sitting on opposite ends of a tunnel, both pretending we weren't calling into the void. I finally went to bed around midnight. Savannah was already asleep or pretending to be. I lay beside her in the dark, eyes wide open, mind chewing on possibilities like a dog with a bone it couldn't quite break. I didn't confront her. Not then. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to shake her awake and hold up the ghost of the bracelet like a piece of evidence. What is this? Who is Jay? Why is wildfire engraved in a bracelet you hid as soon as you saw me? But the larger part, the quieter part, didn't want to hear the answer. Not yet. Because once you open that door, it doesn't close again. So I stayed silent. and Savannah slept peacefully beside me, breathing slow and even while my world began to tilt just a few degrees. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Not yet, but I felt it. And once you feel that shift, even if you pretend otherwise, you never really unfeel it. I kept telling myself it was nothing. That's what you do when you're not ready for the truth. You try to turn down the volume on your gut. You look for logic. Coincidence. You pretend to be reasonable even when your instincts are screaming something isn't right. But the problem with pretending is it only works for so long. And after I saw the bracelet, that beautiful, haunting little thing with wildfire //J burned into my memory, I started noticing all the things I had been unconsciously ignoring. It wasn't just the phone anymore, though that was still a constant presence. She started locking it. Not just a passcode, she'd always had that, but Face ID, Touch ID, app locks. I couldn't even see her calendar anymore, and we used to share that thing to keep track of dinner plans and travel. Now everything had gone private. And then there were the calls. Not at odd hours necessarily, but oddly placed. She'd step out to answer them. Sometimes she'd say it was her mom or a work call, but her tone didn't match. She laughed a little too hard. Or got suddenly quiet when I walked by. Once I came outside to water the basil we kept by the front porch. She was in the driveway with the car door cracked open, talking low. When she noticed me, she flinched, not exaggerated, just enough to look guilty. I waved, pretending not to hear anything, and she smiled like nothing happened. But I remember the way she rushed off the phone. The kind of urgency that says you shouldn't be hearing this. Then there were the retreats. Savannah had never been a yoga person. I mean, she dabbled, who hasn't, but the sudden interest in weekend getaways, sound baths, breathwork seminars? That came out of nowhere. At first, I was supportive. I thought maybe she was just trying something new, something for herself. But the trips got more frequent. Always somewhere with spotty cell service. Always with vague details about who else was going. Sometimes she'd come back with photos, but rarely of people. Just sweeping views of cabins, lakes, sunsets. Images that could have been stock photography for all I knew. I didn't push. I didn't want to be that guy. Controlling. Paranoid. But every time she left, I felt like I was watching her slip further away, like I was seeing the back of someone walking into the fog, and all I could do was stand still. The worst part was that she didn't even seem distant. Not in the obvious way. She still smiled. Still kissed me goodnight. Still called me babe in that breezy, casual voice. But the warmth was different. Lighter. Like a coat she wore in front of me but took off the second she was out of sight. A few weeks after the bracelet incident, we went to her cousin's birthday barbecue. Family stuff, the usual. But I overheard her talking in hushed tones to one of her friends near the fire pit. I was helping her uncle bring out a cooler, and I caught just a snippet of their conversation as we passed behind them. Savannah said, "I just need more freedom, you know? More space. I feel like I'm suffocating in this whole routine." Her friend nodded, murmuring something I didn't catch. I kept walking like I hadn't heard a thing, but it hit me harder than I expected. We'd built this life together, deliberately, carefully. We picked this neighborhood because she liked how walkable it was. We got this house because of the light in the kitchen. She chose our dog's name after a character from a book she loved. And now it was suffocating? That night, lying in bed next to her, I stared up at the ceiling and realized I no longer knew what was true. So I started recording voice memos. Not for evidence. Not to trap her. I just needed a place to put everything. A kind of mental unloading dock. My phone became a digital diary, one where I could speak freely even if just into the void. I didn't even re-listen to them at first. I just recorded my thoughts while driving, walking the dog, brushing my teeth. It became a ritual. It helped me feel like I wasn't going crazy. This morning, I said into my phone one day while parked outside the grocery store. She left early to go meet Chelsea for brunch, but Chelsea texted me about dropping off a book later and didn't mention seeing Savannah. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe they rescheduled. But I can't stop the thought that she's lying. Another time, after dinner. She laughed too hard at a text again. When I asked who it was, she said, "Just a group chat." Then changed the subject. It was probably nothing. I sound like a lunatic. Over time, the memos started to sound less confused and more resigned. She said she's going to a retreat in New Braunfels next weekend. It's the third one this month. I asked for the address just to have it in case, and she told me she'd send it but never did. When I brought it up again, she said she lost it. That doesn't even make sense. I didn't want to believe what my instincts were telling me. But that was becoming harder by the day. One Saturday night, while we were out for drinks with friends, she got up to take a call mid-conversation. Didn't excuse herself, just saw the screen light up and muttered, "1 SEC," before disappearing out to the sidewalk. I sat there, trying to focus on what Jake was saying about his new job, but all I could see was Savannah outside, pacing slowly in the reflection of the restaurant window, hand pressed to her ear. When she came back, she smiled too quickly. Her lipstick was slightly smudged. I handed her a napkin. She blinked like I'd startled her. "What?" she asked. "You've got a little." I gestured vaguely at her mouth. She laughed, wiped it away, and said thanks. "I'm a mess tonight." She wasn't. She looked perfect. And that made me feel worse. I kept hoping for a sign, something that would swing the pendulum one way or the other. A message, a slip, a confession, even a denial I could believe. But none came. Just more silence. More small lies. More locked doors in places where there used to be windows. One night, I scrolled back through my voice memos and started listening. It felt like stepping into someone else's life. Like hearing the unraveling of a man who once trusted without question. There was a tone in my voice I didn't recognize, thin, brittle, quietly breaking. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the floor of our bedroom, back against the wall, phone to my ear, listening to myself, trying to make sense of something I couldn't admit out loud, that the woman I loved was slowly becoming a stranger. It wasn't one big betrayal. Not yet. It was a series of subtle shifts. A pattern of absences. 1,000 little exits that didn't look like doors at first. But once you start noticing the patterns, you can't stop. They refuse to be ignored. It happened on a Tuesday. A quiet evening, the kind where nothing feels like it's about to break. We'd eaten leftovers. Savannah was curled up on the couch with a book, one foot tucked under her thigh the way she always sat. The dog was asleep by the sliding glass door, tail twitching every so often in a dream. And me? I was cleaning out old files from my phone, a digital cleanse I'd been putting off for months. I wasn't looking for anything. Not that night. I had a folder labeled notes, mostly voice memos I hadn't listened to since recording them. At the time, they helped me process things I couldn't put into a conversation. A running stream of thoughts, questions, gut feelings. I'd never meant for them to be anything more than that. But I clicked on one by accident. Maybe my thumb slipped, maybe something else in me knew it was time. Either way, it started playing. It was short. Maybe 45 seconds. And it wasn't just me talking. The audio was muffled at first, background noise, a slight breeze, traffic in the distance. But then her voice came through. Savannah. Laughing. Not the laugh she gave me when she thought something was sweet or mildly funny. This one was unguarded. Giddy. The kind you give someone who's made you feel like the only person in the room. I froze. The recording must have been from the day she took a call out by the garden, one I'd accidentally left running on my phone while trimming the bushes. I hadn't realized I'd picked up her voice at all. "I'm telling you," she said in the recording, her voice low, conspiratorial. "Last weekend was exactly what I needed. He booked this random little cabin by the lake, totally last minute, no agenda. Just showed up, wine in hand, grinning like he knew how much I needed to breathe." A pause, then more laughter. I felt free. Like my body remembered who I was. Not wife me. Not the planner, the organizer, the always accountable one. Just me. There was another voice, her friend, probably Elena, though it was too faint to tell. Then Savannah again, more serious now. "I mean, Miles is stable and I love him for that. But Jason is wildfire. He makes me feel like I don't need to apologize for being restless." Jason. That was the J. There it was, confirmation dropped into my lap, not like a hammer, but like a slow-turning knife. My first reaction wasn't rage. It was disbelief. I stared at the phone like maybe it had glitched, maybe it was playing someone else. But I knew her voice. Every cadence. Every hesitation. I knew it too well to pretend it wasn't her. She didn't sound sorry. Not in the least. There was no tremble in her voice. No guilt. Just this kind of clarity, like she'd made peace with it long before I ever caught on. And the worst part? She wasn't confessing. This wasn't a moment of regret. A tearful admittance. It was casual. Like she was talking about a vacation or a hobby. Something that made her feel alive. I paused the recording. The room was quiet except for the sound of her turning a page. She had no idea what I'd just heard. No idea what was playing 5 feet away from her. I looked at her, backlit by the lamp, her face calm, content. She glanced up at me, smiled. "Hey," she said. "You good?" I nodded. "Yeah, just organizing files." She went back to her book, and I went back to the recording. Hit play again just to make sure I hadn't imagined it. But the words were still there, still vivid, still unmistakably hers. I sat with it for a long time, After she went to bed, I stayed up in the kitchen, staring at the tile. I kept thinking about all the moments I had blamed myself for being boring, for being too predictable, for not being spontaneous enough. I had convinced myself that her drifting away was something I'd caused, that if I just did more, tried harder, loosened up, maybe I could bring her back. But the truth was, she had left long before I noticed the door opening. And Jason, he wasn't just a name anymore. He was a presence, a thread running through our life like an undercurrent, pulling pieces of her away from me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to her in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each of her breaths. It was strange, lying so close to someone who just unknowingly told you exactly how far away they really were. The next morning, I woke up before she did. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, trying to feel anything other than hollow. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even feel surprise anymore. Just a kind of cold understanding. I opened my laptop and listened to the recording again, this time with headphones. I wanted to be sure, wanted to hear every word, every inflection. It wasn't edited. It wasn't misunderstood. It was real. After breakfast, I transferred the audio file to a flash drive. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I needed it out of my phone. Needed it to exist separately from me, like an object I could hold or throw away or deliver whatever came next. Savannah hummed as she got ready, picked out a blue blouse, asked if her earrings matched. I told her they did. She kissed my cheek before leaving for work. I just stood there in the hallway, watching her walk down the driveway with the same smile she'd worn the day she said yes to marrying me. And all I could think was, she really believes I don't know. That afternoon, I walked the lake trail near our house, the one we used to bike together back when things were simple. I sat on a bench overlooking the water, flash drive in my hand, the weight of it unfamiliar and heavy. It wasn't just evidence. It was a funeral. For our engagement. For our plans. For the version of Savannah I thought I was marrying. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my brother. Not my best friend. Not even my dad, who would have known exactly what to say. I just held it inside, letting the reality settle into place, letting the shock wear off and turn into something harder, more stable. Resolve. The next few days passed in a daze. She went on with her life like nothing had changed. She texted me updates from work, sent me pictures of a dog she wanted to adopt, made dinner plans for the weekend. I answered. I played along. But underneath, I was preparing. Quietly, deliberately, I started making lists of what I would need to take, what accounts were shared, what vendors to contact. I called my cousin in Utah who'd once mentioned a cabin he kept for off-grid weekends. I looked up ticket prices. I changed the passwords to my personal accounts. And one night, after Savannah went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a note. Just one page. No anger. No accusations. Just a simple goodbye and a request not to call. When I finished, I folded it neatly and placed it inside an envelope. Slid the flash drive in too. Sealed it shut. I left it on the counter beside her favorite mug. The next morning, while she slept, I packed a single duffel bag with the essentials. Clothes, laptop, charger, toothbrush. Nothing sentimental. Nothing I couldn't live without. I looked around the house one last time. Our photos, our shared bookshelf, the dent in the wall from when we tried to hang a painting and failed. I wasn't angry. I just felt done. I closed the door quietly behind me. By the time she woke up, I was gone. There was no slam of the door. No suitcase dragged across the hardwood. No raised voice. No speech rehearsed in the mirror. I left quietly because there was nothing left to say. Because the loudest decisions are sometimes made in silence. I drove west before sunrise, just as the city started to stretch awake. Savannah wouldn't notice I was gone right away. My car keys were still on their hook. I'd left her the good coffee. I hadn't taken anything from our bedroom but the bare essentials. She'd wake up thinking I'd gone for a run, maybe grabbed breakfast. Maybe even smile at the note before realizing what it really meant. It was handwritten, ink on heavy stationery. I'd written it the night before in one sitting without crossing anything out. Savannah. I know. I heard the recording. I know about Jason. I've been seeing the signs for a while, even when I didn't want to believe them. I'm not angry. I'm just done. Please don't contact me. Miles? That was it? No guilt trip. No emotional grenade. Just facts. Just a line drawn in ink instead of shouted through tears. I didn't leave my location. I didn't block her number either. I didn't need to. Once you walk out of something like that, not in anger, not in fear, but in clarity, it's hard to turn back. The drive took nearly 18 hours. I didn't rush it. I stopped for gas in Amarillo, got a sandwich somewhere near Albuquerque. I played old playlists I hadn't touched since we first got engaged, skipping every song that reminded me of her. When I pulled into Utah just past midnight, the sky looked unfamiliar in the best way, bigger, cleaner, like it had space for thoughts too heavy to carry in a city. The cabin was smaller than I expected. 2 rooms. A porch with a crooked chair. No signal unless you walked a few hundred yards up the nearest hill. It was perfect. I spent the first day unpacking, not just my bag, but my brain. I didn't check my phone. I didn't even plug it in. I left it face down on the counter like it might burn me if I stared too long. I made coffee on a tiny stove. Ate whatever I could find in the pantry. Sat out on the porch with a blanket, watching the desert shift from amber to gold to bruised purple. No notifications. No lies. No half-answers about yoga retreats or who Jay was. Just quiet. The second day, I started writing again. Not to anyone. Just to myself. I pulled out an old journal I hadn't touched since before the engagement and started recording what I felt without worrying about how it sounded. I didn't write poetry. Nothing dramatic. Just, today I woke up and didn't check her texts. Today I ate breakfast and didn't wonder who else she might be texting. Today I didn't look over my shoulder. It felt like breathing again after holding it in too long. The third day, I finally powered my phone back on. 63 missed texts. 4 voicemails. 24 emails. All from Savannah. The first ones were short. Where are you? Are you okay? Can we talk? Then they grew longer. More pleading. Apologies. Justifications. Some confused, others panicked. I didn't open them all. Didn't need to. I could see the arc from the subject lines alone. One voicemail stood out. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Hey, Miles. I don't know what to say. I know you know. I heard the recording. I don't even know how to explain what happened. Jason was never supposed to be anything. I was just lonely. That's not your fault, I know that. I'm sorry. Please, can we just talk? One call. That's all I'm asking. I deleted it. Not because it hurt. Because I'd already made my choice. I didn't respond. Not once. Not even when she texted days later saying she'd contacted my parents. I'd already warned them. My mom said she'd handle it. I believed her. I stayed in that cabin for almost 3 weeks. The days started to blur in the best way, morning hikes, evenings by the fire, long periods of stillness that felt like therapy. I didn't think about Savannah constantly. That surprised me. I thought her voice would haunt me in every silence. But instead, what haunted me was the version of myself that had stayed so long in something that was clearly dying. That was the part one had to mourn. Not the love, but the blindness. The way I'd bent around her moods, adjusted to her distance, made excuses for her shifts in energy. I wasn't innocent, I'd withdrawn too toward the end. But I had never lied. I hadn't turned to someone else. I hadn't taken my restlessness and handed it to a man who called me wildfire. On the 14th day, I opened a new notebook. I didn't write about her. I wrote about what I wanted next. A life less curated. A space that didn't require constant proving. A relationship where I didn't feel like I was slowly being voted off the island. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel tired. I felt new. When I finally returned to Austin, I didn't go back to her house. I had already arranged for a moving company to grab my things. What little I had taken was stored in a friend's garage, waiting for me to decide where I'd land. I rented a short-term place by the lake. Nothing fancy, just clean, quiet, with wide windows that faced the water. The kind of place that didn't ask anything of me except to exist in it. Savannah had sent one last message by then. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I'm sorry. I really am. I wish I could take it back. I hope you're okay. I hope one day you'll forgive me. But I know I don't deserve it. I read it twice, then archived it. Not out of cruelty. Just because I didn't want her to think silence meant hatred. It didn't. It meant closure. And I needed to live in that without letting her back into the room. I didn't post anything publicly. I didn't update friends right away. I let the world find out slowly, the way a forest discovers it's missing one of its trees. People asked where Savannah was. I told them we called off the wedding. That was enough. If they asked why, I'd hand them a USB drive and say, listen to this. Some did. Others just nodded and let it drop. Funny thing is, I didn't feel the need to explain. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't concerned with how the story sounded. I wasn't narrating it to make myself look better. I just let it be what it was, a decision made with eyes wide open in the quiet dawn of a Tuesday morning. I never saw her again. I never went back for closure. The door had already closed behind me. I never went looking, but updates have a way of finding you. Especially when your ex-fiancé is photogenic, socially connected, and seemingly allergic to introspection. A month after I left, I got the first glimpse by accident. A mutual friend posted a group photo from Venice Beach. There she was, right in the middle. Barefoot. Holding a drink. Wearing a sundress I hadn't seen before. Tanned. Smiling wide. Jason was in the photo, too. I didn't need a tag to know it was him. He looked like the kind of guy who wore his recklessness proudly. Hair tousled, shirt half unbuttoned, one hand on her lower back. Savannah was leaning into him, her smile the kind you give when you know people are watching and you don't care. That post was the first, but not the last. Over the next few weeks, more filtered in, sometimes from people who didn't even realize we'd broken up. A coworker shared a crazy weekend in Cali post with a boomerang of Jason spinning Savannah on the sand. Another from someone in her old marketing circle, captioned nothing but good vibes in Santa Monica, had her in the background, laughing with a group around a beach bonfire. No mention of me. Not even a hint. She had moved on. Relocated to the coast, from what I could tell. Her hair was longer now, a lighter color. She wore more white. Her entire aesthetic seemed to have shifted overnight from curated chic to spontaneous sunchaser. If it weren't for her face, still unmistakably hers, I might not have recognized her. There was something surreal about watching someone you once planned to marry vanish into someone else's life without hesitation. No transition. No in-between phase. Just gone from my world, embedded in another, as though her past had been erased and rewritten. I didn't stalk her accounts, I never followed her new ones. But friends, cousins, even old classmates would occasionally send me *TS unprompted. As if I needed proof. As if they wanted to make sure I wasn't still holding on to some hopeful version of her. Each time, the message was unspoken but clear: she's moved on. You can too. One night, my cousin forwarded me a reel from a yoga and surf retreat Savannah had apparently co-hosted. Her voice played over clips of her walking barefoot down a beach, holding a mug of green tea, sitting in a circle with other women. Sometimes, she said, you have to lose everything you thought you needed to find the life that was waiting for you. I watched it once. Then closed my phone and walked outside. The air was cooler by the lake that night. Still, I sat on a bench, hands tucked into my jacket, staring at the water. I tried to be angry. Tried to let her voice loop in my head long enough to spark something. But the emotion didn't come. Not rage. Not jealousy. Just a weird, hollow neutrality. I was glad she didn't mention me by name. That would have stung. But even more than that, I was glad she didn't pretend she hadn't left a crater in someone's life while she found herself. That was always the difference between us. She chased clarity like it was something to be earned only after everything burned down. I found mine in the quiet, in the aftermath, once the smoke cleared. Some people asked if I thought it would last, her and Jason. If it was real or just the dopamine high of something illicit made permanent. I never had an answer. Partly because it wasn't my business anymore. And partly because I didn't care. Not in the performative way. In the real way, the way you don't feel heat in your chest when someone mentions their name. From what I could gather, she left her job. Took on something freelance. Started consulting, maybe coaching. Her posts, the ones people sent me anyway, leaned heavy into wellness speak. Alignment. Freedom. Self-expansion. There were hashtags. There were carefully edited videos with ukulele music and drone *TS of beaches and mountain trails. It looked nice. Pretty. Aspirational even. But none of it felt real to me. Because I'd seen the version of her that cried on Sunday nights when work was overwhelming. The one who made spreadsheets for vacations. The one who liked order. Grocery lists. Clean counters. Morning routines. That woman had once told me she loved the predictability of our life, that it made her feel safe. Now, she said things like predictability is a prison. Maybe both were true. Maybe neither were. People change. Or maybe they just reveal what was always there. I remember once, early in our relationship, we'd gotten caught in the rain walking back from a show downtown. I tried to pull her under an awning, but she kept spinning in the street, arms wide, soaking wet. She looked at me like I was missing the moment. It's just water, she said, laughing. Later that night, she asked if I always played it safe. I said something like, I like dry clothes and working phones. She laughed again, but softer. It's strange the moments that come back to you. Tiny fragments that feel meaningless at the time, but in hindsight say everything. I don't know what her days look like now. I don't know what she thinks about when the cameras are off and the ocean is quiet. Maybe she really is happy. Maybe she found something that made the detour worth it. Or maybe she just got good at pretending. But none of that is mine to figure out anymore. She made her choice. And I made mine. I didn't block her number. Never needed to. She stopped reaching out after the third week. No more texts. No more emails. It was like she understood that the line had gone cold. That whatever door she had kept cracked open was finally closed. There was a strange freedom in not having to check anymore. I didn't worry about running into her at the grocery store or seeing her car parked on our old street. I didn't have to scrub my apartment of her things because she never saw the new one. She never stepped through that door. Never left anything behind to gather dust. Everything we were stayed in the past. Every reminder belonged to another address. Once or twice I dreamed about her. Not nightmares. Just flickers. A version of her from before. The Savannah who leaned her head on my shoulder during car rides. Who left sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. The one who cried watching Pixar movies and made up names for every dog she saw. That version doesn't exist anymore. She was retired, rewritten, folded into someone else's story. And the part of me that loved her? He doesn't exist anymore either. Back in Austin, I didn't rush to rebuild, I restored. I expanded my company, shifting into smart home air systems. Signed 2 big commercial contracts and set up a small team I actually trusted. I moved into a place by the lake, built for peace, not performance. The silence didn't haunt me anymore, it helped me think. I started writing under a pseudonym. Essays on resilience, detachment, clarity. A quiet corner of the internet that grew slowly, word by word. Readers found it. Some even wrote back. For the first time in years, my voice felt like mine again. 3 years later, a message came from someone named Emily, a teacher in Asheville. She'd read one of my essays and said it felt like someone finally wrote what she couldn't say out loud. Our letters started slow. Intentional. Weighty in the best way. When we finally met, there were no fireworks, just quiet recognition. No need to impress, just space to be. For the first time, I wasn't chosen for what I could build around someone, I was seen for who I already was. That became the foundation. One I could finally trust.